Okay, so the title of my talk is the heading is culture, which is what we're talking about for the next several days, and is the topic of the retreat. And the subtitle of my talk is the standard version or the standard version of meditation. Now, I might talk longer than 10 minutes because I'm going to be doing quite a bit of quoting from David McMahan's book entitled Rethinking Meditation. So many of us are on retreat, as Kim mentioned, and we are reflecting upon culture, both our own cultures and the many, many cultures that influence how we meditate. Now, some people, maybe we could even say many people, believe they can experience a sublime state that is free from all cultural influences. And it's sometimes described as, quote, the way things really are, that there is some steady way things really are, and culture does not impact how we see it. That's what I learned early in my Buddhist practice. I don't believe this anymore, nor does David McMahan. So I'm lifting quotes from the book. And as Janet said yesterday, the book is dense, it's academic, but I'm lifting quotes from various places, and I don't think they'll seem quite as dense as, as they do embedded in other parts of the book. So McMahan asks the general question, what role does culture play in meditation? As well as the more specific question, what role has modern, Western, secular, and elite transnational culture played in constituting its current forms? And he argues that culture is much more important to meditation than is often assumed, and that meditation is actually as much a social and a cultural practice as a personal one. So last night during the retreat, we had people introduce themselves based on the cultures that influence them and influence their meditation. And it really struck me how much Buddhist meditation practice was. If we combined us all, we'd have centuries of it. And many of us came from a Vipassana practice. That's my experience. Many came from Zen, some came from Tibet, and several came from Iowa. That's another story. So we come from many versions of Buddhism, although most, if not all of us here today on this call, have been exposed to what David McMahan refers to as, quote, the standard version, unquote, of meditation. And I'm going to speak to that mostly in this talk this morning. And the standard version also combines elements of many different forms of Buddhist meditation, much like we do. So quoting McMahan again, although mindfulness has a long and diverse history, mindfulness today has come to mean the non-judgmental awareness of the present moment, what I have come to think of as the standard version of meditation. And McMahan is struck by the way one particular form of meditation, the standard version as he calls it, has quickly become dominant in so many settings. And so because of that, he decided it was worthy of historical, cultural, and philosophical investigation. I will not be going into most of that. That is in the book. But I pulled that line because I've often, too, wondered why this form of meditation is considered by many to be meditation. That we do something that's sort of a spin-off of that, but it really has many differences. And often when I first introduced reflective meditation, people really wonder, is this really meditation at all? But McMahan's book shows that meditation is so many things in so many ways throughout history, across cultures, many differences. But going back to that standard version, It really does come in many parts, or he says the apex of this effort was John Kabat-Zinn's mindfulness-based stress reduction, commonly called MBSR, which he deliberately stripped of religious language and references to Buddhism, even though it was derived from Zen and Vipassana traditions. And I'm going to add in and includes yoga when it's given as the course. So this has allowed MBSR to be taught and practiced in public schools and government institutions. And there's a plethora of scientific studies on the effect of the various secularized forms of meditation and mindfulness, which has given it a legitimacy that could only be conferred by its occupation of secular spaces. MBSR and other secular mindfulness practice have been tailored to the contours of American laws on the separation of church and state. And this is an example of how the cultural, political, and legal contexts in which these practices occur shape the practices themselves, along with how their purposes are conceived. So David McMahan speaking some more. In the 1980s, when I first encountered it, that is meditation, it was still a fringe activity, the province of beat poets, avant-garde musicians, and aging hippies. Well, in the 1980s, I'm not sure how much hippies were aging, but that's another story. Now it's something your family doctor recommends, along with exercising and eating your vegetables. Somehow I left that line, along with exercising and eating your vegetables. And it's true. Mindfulness I have been referred to mindfulness left, right, and center in medical settings. Then they find out I'm a meditation teacher, and that's, then they don't have to keep telling me to meditate. Anyway, I love this wording from McMahan because I actually still am in shock about the transformation of mindfulness from a fringe activity. I kind of think I would have caught up, but I spent so many years sort of hiding that I was a Buddhist meditator because it was too fringy, especially in professional settings. But now it's all changed. Nietzsche is an interesting thing, how things can change so much. So McMahon book, I'm back to quotation, helps clarify where certain features of the standard version come from, as well as how they have become reinvented in recent decades. This complicated lineage goes back to accounts of ancient ascetic practices outlined in the early Buddhist scriptures. It picks up bits and pieces of later Mahayana ideas, along with Chinese, Japanese, and Tibetan elements. And then they weave their way into the discourses of Enlightenment and Romanticism, psychology and existentialism, mid-century countercultures, and more recently, cognitive science and neuroscience. This coalition of historical forces brought these pursuits together and actually produced something new, novel interpretations of meditation, what it does, what it's for, and how it works. So I just think that's really an important thing to take in, that this standard version has not been standard for most of the 2,500 years that Buddhism existed. The standard version is a novel version. And it's novel in terms of how it interprets meditation, what it does, and how it works. And none of these interpretations is derived exclusively from Buddhism itself. So, they're all a mixture. They emerged as these practices were alloyed with modern discourses. These novel interpretations and adaptations tell us something about the context itself. Now, I think this next little section I'm going to read is really what we are investigating in reflective meditation. How we think and feel, what we take for granted, how we live in our world, what are our anxieties, fears, and aspirations. So I'm jumping to a little bit of a different thought here. he talks about even when higher level processes are short circuited by the circumventing of discursive thought common in meditation practices. Okay, I'm going to stop that sentence from him there and go, that's what we're not short circuiting. We're not short circuiting these, quote, higher level processes. By that, we mean more thought, discursive thought, and processing of that. We're allowing that in reflective meditation. But then he goes on to, even when they're short circuited, I could add, and when they're not short circuited, the question is, how does this experience get integrated into your life when you arise from the cushion? Its significance to your ethical decisions, the effect it has on you as you move about your day, the hope it inspires for your general emotional state is deeply shaped by the web of ideas and values surrounding your practice. And this web is applied by culture, which shapes not only one's default intuitions about how to behave as a citizen in a democracy, a consumer in a neoliberal economy, or a subject of an emperor in a medieval aristocracy, but also how one exists in various subcultures, including professions, families, churches, and spiritual communities. So, as I said, in reflective meditation, we could even say that that's what sets it apart from the standard version. We don't try to short circuit these, as what he calls, higher level processes. And we do want to know how meditative experience gets integrated into your life when you rise from the cushion. We want to talk about its significance to your ethical decisions, the effect it has as you move about your day, the hope that it inspires for your general emotional state. We believe your practice is deeply shaped by the web of ideas and values surrounding the practice, and that this web is supplied by your culture and subcultures. So I'm going to end the talk there. And we are going to sit with higher level. Oh, I don't like that. It's so hierarchical, isn't it?